Hey, hello, I'm Kråkan, also known as Corvus Cornix, so welcome to Classic Movie Rambles, where I talk about old movies that I found in my closet while cleaning. This week's movie is The X-Files, Season 1, Episode 1, The Pilot, and it's about 46 minutes long. It was recorded in between 1993 and 1994. And the movie starts with a dark forest and a girl running from something. And she comes into a clearing and she falls. And then there is a bright light. And a man, the wind picks up and there's a man approaching from the light. And then cutting to the next day or sometime later when there's an investigation of the thing. So they find the girl dead. And they examine her and they kind of found out that local authorities, of course, they found out like this girl is related to someone, to the sheriff somehow. His son used to be in the same class or something. And then cutting to FBI's headquarters, and it's Scully's first day there, and she goes to see the director for her new assignment, and the cigar smoking man is there, which is an important character in the X-Files universe. He's the sort of cleanup guy. You don't really know much about him at this point because of the first episode, but he's the sneaky guy that pulls the strings behind the curtains, basically. And Scully gets the task of keeping an eye on Fox Mulder, which is this guy that more or less goes through the X-Files and all this weird kind of stuff. And she goes down to the basement where he's at, where he's working. So she knocks on the door, and it's kind of a funny scene because then Mulder kind of answers, "There's nobody here but the FBI's most unwanted guy." And she kind of enters, and she sees his study, and it's full of UFO posters and conspiracy theories, like one of those kind of cliche, billboard kind of thing. You have like strings attached with red yarn and kind of all that weird stuff. And she introduced herself to him, but he knows her because he's read her file. So they argue a bit, and he shows her some overhead photos of the victims that died. So he's currently investigating the case of he called them abductees, but Scully's not really into the whole idea. And then he shows her some chemical formula, and she thinks it's natural or something. There was something in the trace of the body or whatever. There's some chemical in these bodies, and he shows the marks. And he kind of asks her what she thinks those marks are, and maybe syringe marks and something, but all the victims have them. And so they argue for a bit, but then they go out to this place. They take a flight. And on the plane, she goes through the files of the missing people, and there is like turbulence, and the plane kind of dips. But Mulder is fast asleep, and he wakes up, and he kind of remarks that this might be just a special place. And then on the last bit, down to the official, I think they're in Oregon or somewhere. On the last bit, excuse me, they take a car and they kind of discuss a bit, and then the radio goes haywire, and the numbers and everything kind of gets distorted. And then Mulder kind of stops the car, and he goes out and he takes out this spray can from the back of the trunk, and he marks the spot on the road. He makes like an X. And Scully kind of asks, "What are you doing?" Well, and he kind of like, "Well, you never know," or something. They go back in the car, and he kind of confuses her, but this comes back in a play later. And then they arrive in town, and they go to check out the investigation. They're supposed to dig up this body, and they get confronted by the district doctor. And he kind of confronts them because he hasn't been notified that they're supposed to dig up graves. And they kind of argue, and his daughter, the district doctor's daughter, tells his dad that they should leave, and they leave. And then they dig up the grave, and the crane that's holding the casket or the coffin, one of the band bursts, and the coffin falls over to the ground, and it busts open. And later, Scully does an autopsy on the body in a lab, and Mulder is there taking photos. And later on, Scully is doing a report in her room, in her separate hotel room. She's doing a report, and she found this metallic kind of item in the body. And then Mulder kind of knocks on the door. He asks if she wants to join him for a jog, and she says no. And the next day they go to the psychiatric hospital or ward to check on the other kids and see how they're doing. And then they go to see one of the patients, which is in a vegetable state. He is in a awake comatose state. His name is Billy Miles, and they look up on him. They go into his room and they try to talk to him, but he is not obviously responsible, or responsive is the right word. And then there's another girl, Peggy. She's in a wheelchair and she is reading this story to Billy. And then Mulder kind of asks if he can read a story to Billy for some reason. I don't know why. And she said, no, Billy likes when I read to him. And then Mulder kind of suggests to one of the doctors or the nurses, is it okay if I run some tests? And then Peggy freaks out and she starts to bleed from her nose, and she falls out of her wheelchair and she freaks out. And Mulder he sees like the shirt of the girl like from behind. He sees that she has also 2 marks on her back, and that was one of the things that were present on the girl from the first abduction, as it were. And Scully kind of confronts Mulder when they leave, and she's confused, and she basically asks Mulder, what is going on? Tell me the truth. What do you know? And what I think? There's been an abduction. There's been abductees, basically, but she doesn't believe that at all. So they go to the forest at night to check out this place where these abductions supposedly happened. And Scully finds this strange kind of dust on the ground, and there's this strange light, but it isn't an alien abduction. It's actually someone associated with the county sheriff asking them to leave because they're on private property. Excuse me. And then, of course, they leave. They get forced out of there, and they try to drive back to the hotel. And Mulder kind of check his watch, and all of a sudden there's this flash of light, and then basically the car just stops. Excuse me. And then Mulder gets out of the car, and it starts to rain. And he checks the watch, and Scully's kind of confused. What happened? And they said, we lost like 9 minutes. And something has happened, and the car has just stopped. And he goes back to the road, and this is harkening back to the situation before, like the X that they marked on the runway is actually there. So it's this strange place where things actually happen. So that basically time has stopped. They lost 9 minutes. They don't even know what's happened. And then they go back to the hotel, and basically what happens is Scully's supposed to write a report, and then the power goes out, and she's supposed to take a shower. And then when she takes off her clothes, she realizes that she has marks on her back, and she gets really scared, and she goes to Mulder to check it out. And she thinks she has been marked as an abductee as well because of the crazy stories that Mulder been telling her, but obviously that's not the case. And she kind of stays there, and he kind of explains, like why he's doing this, why he's so into the X-Files, because his sister got abducted when he was very little, and that was why he got into the whole thing. And then they get a phone call from a girl telling them that Peggy is dead. That was the girl in the wheelchair from earlier. And they go to investigate the crime scene. It's the middle of the night, and they say that she just ran out of in traffic and got hit by a truck. But that's very strange because she was in a wheelchair, right? And Scully kind of examines the body, and she sees that Peggy's watch has stopped. And then they go, then they figure out like the body that they did an autopsy on has been stolen, and they think that's very strange. And they go to the motel room, and it's on fire. So all the evidence and Scully's PC and everything has been burning up. And then they get confronted by the girl who actually did call him on the other end, and it's the daughter of the district doctor, and she wants protection. So they go into this diner and they talk, and she informs them that what has been happening so far. And she starts to bleed from her nose, and her father, the district doctor, and the sheriff or the police, head of police, arrives to take her away. And Mulder gets the information that Billy Miles's father is the head of the police department. So all of these kind of weird parts kind of fall into place. And then they go check on the other graves of the other supposed abductees, that the disappearance, and the graves has all been digged up. And then Scully kind of wants like some more information. She doesn't really know what's going on, and Mulder kind of says the crazy idea like it has to be Billy Miles, and Scully's not convinced and she thinks he's crazy, but they go check on Billy Miles, and Scully checks Billy's feet, and it's full of these dusts from the abducted place in the forest, and it's very strange. And then Mulder confronts her about this, and he tells her, because he's under investigation by the FBI and they don't really believe him, so Scully has to write the report because that's more believable. If she's telling the truth, they kind of have to believe in this whole crazy story that's been going on. And then they go out to the forest again at night to gather some more samples, because of the samples were destroyed in a motel fire. And then they hear a scream, and they run off towards the scream. And then Scully gets pistol whipped, so she gets unconscious. She falls down, and then Mulder kind of arrives just as Billy Miles picks up this girl, and the wind is like spinning around, and it's like this crazy scene where bright light is upon them and everything. And Billy Miles' father is there, and he's aiming a shotgun at Mulder, and he says, "Are you gonna let your son do this again?" And then Billy Miles' father has a change of heart, and he turns to Billy and he said, "Billy, you have to stop." And he's holding that other girl, the daughter of the district doctor, in his arms, and he shoots, but Mulder kind of like jumps on him, so the shot kind of goes astray and misses them, and then there is the flash of light, and the cycle is broken. Billy's kind of markings are gone, and he's kind of confused to where he is. He doesn't know. And Scully arrives, and she asks what happens, and Mulder kind of says like, "It was beautiful, you should have been here," or something, which is kind of stupid because she was more or less groggy or knocked down unconscious. And then cutting to an interview with Billy, well, he tells the story of what happened, exactly like they were recruited by this strange alien, and they wanted to bring them back to the force to do some experiments on him. And then cutting to behind the glass where Scully is with the director and the cigar-smoking man. And the cigar-smoking man kind of whispers something into the ear of the director, and then he leaves. And then later they cut to the directors and Scully actually talking out the whole thing. And she kind of explaining like, this and this happened, but there's no proof of it. And this kind of this bummed out moment. They had all the proofs, but they were burned or just disappeared. And then she leaves the office. She's kind of frustrated, and she leaves. But then the cigar smoking man kind of returns into the office. And Scully actually left one. She actually saved one of these implants that she found in one of the bodies that supposedly control these kind of young adults to do these things that they were. So what happens is, later that night, she can't sleep, and she doesn't know what to make of all this. And then Mulder calls her up, and he tells her that the whole case file on Billy Miles is missing. There's no record of him in a database or on file. And then, Sakata says, we talk about this tomorrow. And then cutting to the cigar-smoking man walking into the Pentagon with this long aisle with like all these storage numbers and everything. It has this head controlling metal device, and he puts it in one of the boxes, and then he leaves and he closes the door, and it's like the whole cover-up story is right there, and it's kind of a funny thing. So what do I think of this long running series? It's awesome. It's one of those series like it's kind of slow in the beginning, but then it picks up. And you have to see it. I mean, it's part of like, it ran for so long. There's like 7 seasons now or something. And there are like 2 or 3 movies. and it's like this whole mystery kind of unraveling as they go. So there was one more funny thing when I watched it. It's like when they arrive in Oregon, or this place where they're supposed to do the investigation, this was like in 1993 or something, so the clothes and cars and everything matched that aesthetics. They didn't have any cell phones. They didn't have like, they have like old, the clothing and everything screams the early 90s. And I thought, like, this is nostalgia right here. It's kind of funny. It's kind of an awesome. You have to see this. If you haven't, go watch it. So anyway, thanks for watching, and take care.